is up? What is happening? It's the DFS DGen Nation pod coming at you live. Week 3. We out here. I'm with my boy at Fantasy Rat 13 is where you can find him on Twitter. His name, Kevin Steele. My name, Ryan Williams, on Twitter at @RyanAlexander_W. And we got week 3 DFS main slate to break down with the DraftKings focus, Kev. Isn't that right?
Hell yeah. I'm ready. I had a little bit more of a come up this past weekend than I did the week before. It was a rough week, week 1. But last week we rebounded some. I wish I would have had more DeMarcus Robinson, but and I really, don't want to know at all how things would have flipped with that 74-yard touchdown that was wiped off the board because LaShawn McCoy decided to hold. But
man, bro.
Hardman, I had McCall Hardman everywhere, and I had a few teams where I hedged and went to DeMarcus Robinson. I wish I would have done a little bit more, but looking back still, they both crushed it that game. And really, it could have been a real big game for Hardman had that 74-yard touchdown and been wiped off. I didn't even go and look. As soon as it happened and as soon as they took it away, I'm not even going to look to see what that update is. Be sick.
It's the most frustrating thing, man, ever. And it's one of the most underrated facets of fantasy, I feel like, with the touchdowns that are being called back and not counted. It just completely changes everything. Tyler Boyd, I believe, had one called back as well too, if I'm not mistaken, which completely kind of changed the trajectory there. Just a weird week all around, Kev. We haven't really talked about it all too much with myself being gone last week after we did our podcast, but the Patriots being the second highest scoring player, not just defense, player for week 2 really kind of changed things a lot and left people a little bit sour, I think, and bank accounts a little bit light, bankrolls a little bit lighter. Because if you really didn't play the Patriots D, it was almost impossible to cash unless you were in some low end, low stakes single entry type tournaments. But any of the big fields, like you went through all the lines and it was Patriots D. It was absolutely insane. I had a lot of exposure to the Chiefs myself. No DeMarcus Robinson, except for on the what slate was that? I had some on a particular slate. I'm drawing a blank now. Not the afternoon.
It was the afternoon only.
Maybe it was the afternoon only. But just absolutely ridiculous. The amount of the way he was able to take, and it's just like, and we'll get into it this week for week 3. But it's like the low end guy, the low price guy for the Chiefs has been popping. So it's like Sammy Watkins was low or had a low price week 1. He pops. DeMarcus Robinson, not on people's radar. He pops. So I'm curious to see where you're at, Kev, being the Kansas City homer and truther. And I'm excited to talk about that game because we should be seeing fireworks in there. But we're on week 3. We're trying to talk about the main slate for you guys. This is a DraftKings focused podcast for those of you guys who are new to DGen Nation fam. So we're going to be breaking this down from DraftKings salaries and everything like that. So without further ado, let's get into the slate. For those of you guys who are new to, make sure you're rating and reviewing the podcast. We're streaming live right now. We're on Periscope. We're on YouTube. Just trying to get a new platform for you guys to see the podcast, but we're also going to be podding it as well. Come through iTunes, come through Stitcher, be on the fantasyauthority.com website. So you're more than welcome to go there and listen, like and subscribe for future content as well too, as you see at the bottom. Let's get into it, Kev. So we got week 3, pretty interesting slate that we have here. And the setup is nice too, because we have, I believe it's 8 noon games that we have, and then, or noon for Central, and then we have 5 afternoon games. So really able to kind of get some balance there. And before we even get into plays, Kev, I want to talk about just what you're thinking about and how you go about attacking, a slate like this. Now that we're in week 3 and we kind of seen how, we're trying to see how usage is kind of coming to fruition. We're seeing how players are utilized. We kind of know a little bit about how these teams are playing and just what is sticking out to you from game stacking perspective, or even just game stacking in general, especially with the Chiefs and Baltimore. These two teams have been just outrageous in scoring the ball, going against each other now in Arrowhead. What kind of slate are we looking at here? Are we going to be able to get some low-owned guys here this week, or is it starting with Lamar Jackson and Pat Mahomes at quarterback and then not thinking about the rest?
Well, there's a few things to factor in for this game, and it is one that there's a lot of. It looks like that this could be a very wet and sloppy type of game because they're calling for up to 5 inches of rain in Kansas City through Saturday. So there is some, people think that maybe it could be, you never know with the weather, but there's some people think they could be done by like halftime, but then there's other people that, they could be going on the entire game. So that could put a damper on a few things, but overall, I think this is probably the at least the sexiest game on the slate, and maybe it'd be different if, Andrew Luck had retired and, we'd be talking about, Atlanta and Indy.
Right.
I think this might be the best game on the slate. And I think that, maybe you can make a case for like Houston, the LA Chargers could be a pretty fun one. And then, surprisingly, I actually think the Giants and Tampa Bay game actually could have some fantasy goodness in there too. So, but right now, I definitely think that this is going to be the chalk game and to select. And I think this is where you're going to see most of your ownership come from. Some of it I think is dangerous because right now, I know a lot of people are really hyping the Ravens, but the Ravens have played the Cardinals and they barely beat the Cardinals. I mean, they came down to the wire there, and then they've beaten the Dolphins, who is by far the worst team in the league. Like, it's not even close. So I don't know if we've seen them. We haven't seen them tested at all. And so heading into Arrowhead, this is the Kansas City Chiefs home opener as well. So. We know that stadium's going to be rocking and everything else. So I don't know. I think that, wouldn't be surprised if it turned out to be, not as high scoring as we think, but I still think that you want to have some exposure to this and trying to figure out, where you're going. Cause there's a lot of ugly games on the slate. And I do think, maybe being a little bit heavier on some of these other games could end up being the way to go.
Yeah, I hear you, Kev. So let's go ahead and get into these quarterbacks for the slate. I mean, as we said, Pat Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, they're the two highest priced, both 7K and above. So really, you're kind of, hedging on a game script of where that game blows out if you're paying for one of the two of those. And obviously, the one that makes more sense to me is Mahomes. I mean, just $600 more than Lamar Jackson playing at home. We know that Mahomes is the catalyst for this offense. So I don't even know in cash or in head-to-heads or in, single entry fees, how you can really, between the two, think about going Lamar over Pat Mahomes. It just doesn't make sense to me. You talked about it with the teams that they've played and just knowing how we've seen Mahomes' body of work for the course of 2 years now, and it's always been, we're chucking the ball, we're airing it out, and it's going to be ridiculous. And Lamar Jackson's kind of just really hitting his stride here. And the Chiefs D is better now. They've gotten new pieces in there. They're really outperforming what they did last year. So it's Pat Mahomes for me there. But the guy I'm looking at, Kev, this week, to be honest with you, is Arizona quarterback Kyler Murray. He comes in at 5,800. Really cheap this week in a high-paced game that should be. This Panthers secondary is absolutely atrocious right now. And the way that you can stack Kyler Murray this week is ridiculous with the weapons that he has there. And Christian Kirk, Larry Fitzgerald, if you want to get David Johnson exposure, sure. And there's a cheap option that I love to talk about at wide receiver as well, too, in a revenge game. So he's definitely first on my list this week to get him in. I do like Deshaun Watson a little bit going against the Chargers, who are just a little bit more stingy on defense, especially with pass catchers. So I'm not sure how Duke Johnson's going to be utilized. We know Watson loves to sit back there and kind of let it rock, chuck it up. So he's interesting. And then another guy I think that I have interest in too in GPPs is Aaron Rodgers going against this Denver D We saw Derek Carr carve him up. Mitchell Trubisky wasn't able to get anything going, but that's the Bears and the way the offense is playing. So where are you looking at with quarterback right now, and how can we attack this week 3?
Yeah, so for me, I think it kind of starts at you're making a decision between paying up for Lamar Jackson or Pat Mahomes, and if you're not, then I don't think I'm going to be hanging it out at all anywhere close to the to the upper echelon of quarterbacks. I think for me, I easily drop down past the Dak Prescott's, the Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson's. I think I live somewhere here in this mid 5K range because I think there's a lot of interesting value there this week. You look at Jameis Winston, who, hasn't been good at all. Let's just be honest. I mean, I think he hasn't had 15 DK points in each of his first games this year. But I do like this matchup for them. They've been given more time because they played last Thursday, so they have had more time to prepare. I do like the fact that the Giants, I actually think, switching to Daniel Jones should also help overall, because I think there's maybe a better chance here of, the Giants, keeping it close and, not getting the doors blown off of them. But I'll say this. I mean, I think Jameis is interesting. I don't think eBay's going to want to play him. I don't think he's going to have a ton of ownership. And at 5,400, I think he's definitely worth a shot. You stack him with, Chris Godwin, who's bald, or Mike Evans, who's really struggled. I think this is kind of now the time to start feasting a little bit on recency bias, because people sort of start jumping off players that we knew early on in the season, like everybody loved Jameis Winston heading into the season, and then now I think you see everybody kind of jump off that. But I do like Jameis Winston quite a bit at that price tag, and then I think even just $100 more, Matt Stafford. They travel to Philly. This is not inside a dome, but you look at Stafford this year. I mean, week 1 he had 31.6, and last week wasn't as good. He had 17.1. But I think in this matchup, I mean, you look at Philadelphia's secondary, and that's one reason why they are tied to Jalen Ramsey right now, is because their secondary is getting torched. And, I think this is a game that, could be a little bit more high scoring. And I do like Stafford here, maybe stack it with Kenny Golladay or something like that. But at 5,500, really low owned Matt Stafford, I think is another area you could go. It's a shame for Philly that looks like that some of these guys, we know Deshaun Jackson is going to be out. We're still kind of waiting on, I don't think they've ruled Alshon Jeffrey out. But so I think that hinders things a little bit. But overall, I definitely think that you can make a pretty strong case for Stafford and, and Jameis. And then, if I was absolutely going to pay up, I do think $5,700 Matt Ryan is certainly piques my interest as well. So for them, they are, traveling, but this is another dome game. I think what the Falcons play, I think it's 13 of 16 games this year inside a dome. And we know how much better this offense is inside a dome. And, while it is on the road, I definitely think he's worth playing. I mean, if you look at the last 2 weeks, he's been solid. I mean, week 1 against Minnesota, where they only put up 12 points, he still had 23.56 DK points. And then last week against Philly at home, he put up 25.1. So, and I mean, he's actually lower this week than he has been. Week 1, he was 6,100, and last week he was 6K. And they actually dropped him down, coming off his best game of the first 2, down to 5,700 against Indy. I mean, Indy's defense is decent, but I mean, they're not world beaters. They're not unbeatable. and So I don't understand the price drop here, so 5,700 Matt Ryan, I definitely have a lot of interest in too.
No, I like that call, Kev, and just the way that Devontae Freeman's being utilized right now, or I guess underutilized or not utilized, however you want to phrase that, definitely makes this intriguing because of the way that Matt Ryan's out there throwing the ball over 40 times. We definitely love to see that from our fantasy quarterbacks here. Kev, I want to talk to you about, a guy like Josh Allen, who's, really been a DFS darling, I guess, so to speak, to start this season. A lot of people wanted to play him in cash games last week, over 30 attempts in both of his 2 games. Rushing upside hasn't really been there, so to speak, but 2 rushing touchdowns in the first 2 games to start the season, and going against the Cincinnati team that, pretty decent enough on defense, but has been able to kind of get towards there by Russell Wilson in week 1, I believe that was. And then, last week as well, too. Is it, and the thing about playing Josh Allen is we know who to stack him with, right? You can stack him with John Brown. You stack him with Cole Beasley. You just know where the ball is going to be going. And maybe if they get Devin Singletary, #free Devin Singletary, because this guy's amazing. If he ends up playing, is he somebody that you're willing to attack this week?
He's certainly, I think, is in play. I know that he week 1 he wasn't fantastic, but this week, heading into this week I think is a much better matchup. Cincinnati's defense is not very good. Also on the other side of the football, Andy Dalton has played very well these first 2 weeks of the season. I mean, he has 25 DK points and 22 last week. I mean, he's been super cheap. I mean, he was $5K week 1 and $5,400 last week, and this week he's $5,300. The problem is at Buffalo. We know Buffalo's defense is very good. So the only thing that worries me is game script here, and for the Bills, like, is this a game where we end up seeing it being like a 24-10 type of game, and there's not a lot of scoring here, and doesn't provide a lot of fantasy upside? And that's my problem with this game right now. Is I don't know about if there's a true path to a lot of fantasy points here. I would rather probably have access to the sum of his parts instead of actually having a lot of Josh Allen. Not that I don't think that he can come out, because he can. I mean, he's been pretty solid, especially if you want to use him in cash or something. Because he scored 20 and then 22 last week, and it's not like the Jets or the Bills, have been going out and like just tearing it up. I will say we have not seen this, him really using his legs as much, or it hasn't been as explosive anyway. Because he's had he's definitely been running, because he's had 17 rushing attempts so far on the season. It's just he only has, about 60 rushing yards right now in the year too. But the one thing that I think that we can talk about is that he does have 2 rushing touchdowns so far this year. He's had 1 each of the last 2 weeks. So that obviously is a big boost, because then you get that 6-point bonus, or the 6 points instead of the 4 points for the quarterback. So that's also something in his range of possibilities as well. So, I don't hate the call, but I just don't know if that the scoring is going to be there enough to where you feel comfortable playing him.
No, I hear you, Kev. It's just I've literally played Josh Allen probably at least 30% these first 2 weeks on both weeks, and I can't find myself getting to enough of him this week. I wonder if maybe it's because we're looking at the PFF wide receiver cornerback matchup chart, and Dre Kirkpatrick has been done pretty well, and he should see a lot of John Brown. Cole Beasley, I've loved him from a cash standpoint, because he's getting those catches, 1 point PPR, but he hasn't found the end zone, so we don't know what his ceiling is. So I'm just not sure if we see enough upside there with Josh Allen in this matchup. And honestly, it wouldn't shock me. Like, this could be a trap game for Buffalo, to be honest. The way that Andy Dalton's kind of slinging the rock there, it's a pretty decent matchup for Joe Mixon if he plays. So I'll be curious to see how this game actually ends out. Kev, we've seen pretty much a bloodbath at quarterback to start the year so far. So we got a lot of cheap options that I guess we just need to talk about to just see if they're viable at all to play in any tournament type fields. I know we talk a lot about tournaments on the show, and these guys might be viable for cash, but might not have that tournament upside. So we're talking about guys like Daniel Jones, the rookie for New York. We got Mason Rudolph filling in for Big Ben. Pittsburgh going on the road to San Francisco. It seems to be a decent matchup if we know what Mason Rudolph we're going to be getting, but I don't think we know enough about his body of work to say one way or the other. Teddy Bridgewater traveling to Seattle, not really feeling that. And I'm not even going to mention the likes of Luke Falk and Josh Rosen, because ew, why are you even playing them? But, for guys like, Daniel Jones and Rudolph and Bridgewater, I guess Taysom Hill is another guy we can talk about. If he's going to be in here, are these quarterbacks even worth touching in tournaments? Are they just strictly, cash plays to kind of load up?
So I think you have to start with Daniel Jones and Mason Rudolph are both intriguing anyway. I will say this with Tampa Bay, like I'm not sure if this is fool's gold here with Tampa Bay's defense, but so far on the season they've allowed, I think it's the seventh fewest fantasy points to the quarterback position so far this year. They've been pretty good. Now some of that could have been the Thursday night game, but I mean even week one, it wasn't like Jimmy Garoppolo went out and just torched this defense. Like all year we kind of thought this defense was going to be awful. But I mean, that really hasn't been been the case here. I think Todd Bowles took over as the defensive coordinator there with Bruce Arians there and in Tampa Bay, and this defense hasn't been the sieve that we thought it was going to be so far.
Yeah.
So, that's certainly something to keep in mind when you sort of like want to load up and not be so worried about because it's the Tampa Bay defense. Now maybe we end up finding out this wasn't true and it was just kind of an early season thing, the way things pulled out. But I mean, looking at Daniel Jones, I mean, finally the Giants did the right thing and moved on from Eli Manning. I mean, Eli Manning never should have been the quarterback this year, let alone the last year either. But Daniel Jones, I mean, looked really, really good in the preseason. We know that I think in college, I think he averaged like 40 rushing yards per game. So he has that mobility to get outside the pocket because they're going to need it because their offensive line isn't very good. I wish they had better weapons, but they still do have Evan Ingram and Sterling Shepard. Sounds like he'll play. So if you wanted to play Daniel Jones at 5K, like I definitely think that's viable. Like you could do it, and then even more so, I think maybe Mason Rudolph might be even a better option just because of the offense. And the weapons that are there. I mean, Mason Rudolph didn't look terrible last week coming in.
Nope.
Now you get a full week to prepare. The 49ers are preparing for Mason Rudolph and not for, Big Ben, and you don't really catch him off guard. So if you wanted to play, like this isn't the worst matchup for him. And so at 4,800, like, if you wanted to stack him with Juju and Vance McDonald or something like that, like I definitely think,
right.
Or I think that James Washington is going to carry a lot of ownership based off that, Mason Rudolph, we've heard this about a million times, and you're going to hear it a million times. The game is that James Washington is Mason Rudolph, college quarterback and their connection and everything else. Like, while that there's definitely some truth there, but like it's just one of those things like that. One of the narratives that has been pounded into our heads now for this entire year. So, yeah. Anyways, like. So, yeah, if you wanted to play Mason Rudolph or Daniel Jones, like they're both and I think, plus matchups and games where, the Steelers, their season could be over with after this weekend if they lose. I mean, they're already 0-2 and things aren't looking great as is.
Yep.
And you go 0-3, that's pretty much night. All
right. Let's take it easy, Kev. Ease up.
Oh, yeah. I forgot, But, you have the Bears to fall back on. At least the Bears finally found a kicker. So, that's exciting.
Hey. Eddie De Niro, baby. Eddie De Niro Panero. No, yeah. I just from redraft purposes, I'm rolling out Mason Rudolph because I have Cam in a 2 QB league. And, if he doesn't play, I need to fill that spot. And so Mason Rudolph coming up because the other guy was Fitzmagic that I had. So I'm curious to see how he goes out there and performs. I mean, and the fact that they just traded their first round pick for Minka to get him in there, it seems like they're invested in this kid for the time being. So, or at least they believe that Roethlisberger can come back next year and be what that is. So let's see what he's got. Kev, before we move on, two other guys that I wanted to touch on real quick. I'll want to give you the floor there, but Kirk Cousins, for me this week at 5,100, I forgot about him. He kind of had that miserable performance, only throwing for, they did win big because of Dalvin Cook, but only throwing for 10 passes in that first game, 1 touchdown. He comes back, has to travel against Green Bay, which is actually turning into a formidable defense there in Green Bay on the road. Threw for 32 times, but didn't get to 300 yards, only 230 and a touchdown. So he's kind of had a mediocre start, and I don't think anybody's playing him, which is why I'm heavily interested in him. Because talk about, with Josh Allen knowing where the points are coming from with Kirk Cousins, you got Stephon Diggs. He had a touchdown actually called back last week, ended up getting a 45-yarder and scored on. Thielen is stealing. This Oakland secondary has been banged up all year, and this is a home spot for him when he's back at home and trying to redeem himself from that first week game. So I really like Kirk Cousins this week. I think it's a huge bounce back spot. But I wanted to ask you real quickly about Dak Prescott and Tom Brady this week. So Tom Brady's going against a Greg Williams team, which their defense has actually been the bright spot this season. And I'm pretty sure Tom Brady, I would love to know the numbers of what Tom Brady's done against Greg Williams defenses, but this is a guy, defense coordinator who's been around, who's going to try and limit this offense as much as he can, and has kind of, I don't want to say the pieces to do it because I don't want to discredit Brady that much, but like, this team is not going to go down without a fight, I don't feel like, from the defensive standpoint. But it's just a matter if the offense can keep up. It might not matter. But he's an interesting play for me at 6,600. He's the third highest priced. I'm not sure how many people will want to go there. It's even ridiculous he has a Q tag on him because I don't think he's that injured. He's going to play. And then Dak Prescott is right there at 6,500, who Dallas should smash against Miami. So is that a good pivot play off of Zeke, who should carry high ownership as well this week? I just want to get your take on these two.
Well, the matchup for Dallas is obviously about as good as it can get. I mean, they're playing Miami at home. I mean, Miami has been, but I'm just going to say this. Would it surprise you at all if Miami came out and just played a much different game? We do this a lot where like we sort of like start getting enamored with things and like we look at things like, oh my gosh, and there's not a lot to like. This is just like a gut thing for me. It's like whenever everybody just all of a sudden like starts like becoming 100% convinced that something's going to happen is the time that you should probably jump off. It's like when the stock is as high as it can get. And I feel like that's where we're at with kind of the Dolphins, right? Is that like we're so low on them and we think that they're like, I mean, there's people saying that, again, the college football teams that could beat the Miami Dolphins. And I know they're trying to tank, but at the same time, like, I still feel like there's pride there for that team. And I don't know, like anytime that like and this could be one of those things where I like on Sunday where we're sitting there and you're like, wow, what is happening right now? How in the hell is the Dolphins keeping pace with the Cowboys? Or, how is the Dolphins, keeping them down? Like, I don't know.
Right.
Something about this game just like doesn't like sit well with me. And not that I'm telling people to not have any exposure to the Cowboys. I think that's silly, but I this is one of those spots where I probably go much under the try to be underweight on them versus being overweight in this matchup. So yeah, I mean, if you want to play Dak at 6,500, I totally get it. I mean, he's been nails each of the first 2 weeks. Right. It's tough, right? Like to especially, I mean, you're talking about a $1,100 savings off Mahomes and $500 savings off Lamar. So like, I get it if you want to go Dak, but like again, like I could see it again. This could be a game where they just kind of get up early and steamroll them, and maybe Dak doesn't finish as well as we want because I mean this offense just rolls through them. But again, you never know. But and again, like I think I'd rather play Deshaun Watson or even like a Phillip Rivers, just because I feel like that game does have shootout potential in LA.
Yeah.
That's not just because it's in LA. Like it's never a home game for the Chargers. The poor Chargers never just get a home game because they don't have fans. But yeah, like I would rather just pivot off of Dak Prescott, who I think is going to carry some decent ownership as well because of this matchup against Miami. And I think I'd rather just play Deshaun Watson, who at 6,400.
No, I agree with you, Kev. We just had to talk about him because I know that people are going to be curious about it. But for me, it's just paying for Zeke this week. And, we could talk about it more when we get into running backs or segue into running backs already. But, Zeke in this matchup, he's 8,900. He's really, I mean, we didn't know if he was going to be playing week 1 or not, but the prices were already set at 9,200. Then he drops 500 down to 8,700 and goes out 1,100, 111 yards and a touchdowns in back-to-back games. And his price only increased by 200. And Saquon Barkley's more expensive than him. And we just saw what Tampa Bay did to Christian McCaffrey. So, like, for me, I'm playing Zeke this week in this game. I mean, he should eat. This is a get right spot for him. Pay the man. I see him finding pay dirt 2 times in this matchup, and people are just not paying up for running backs to start the year, Kev, in tourneys. I'm seeing a lot of the high running backs going unowned. I had a lot of Saquon Barkley last week. Guy was only 17% owned in some of the tournaments I was in. Week 1 with Christian McCaffrey, same type of thing. And so, and these are guys I'm playing in cash too. And they're just so heavy volume. And I know a lot of talk has been made about Dalvin Cook this week, who comes in, as the 5th highest price running back, a huge savings at 7,800 against Oakland. And he's a great play as well too. But if he's going to be chalk, I'm loving the fact that I can get, Zeke there and try and maximize this space, because I just don't know if Dak's going to be needed in that game. Sticking on running backs, Kev, Christian McCaffrey, I love Kyler Murray. I love stacking this Arizona-Carolina game. Kyle Allen's going to be back there. I should assume that Christian McCaffrey should have a bounce back here with, I think more of a target share, lower ADOT passes with Kyle Allen. I'm not sure what his deep ball pass is like, yet to be seen, but I think he did play in a week 17 matchup last year. I just haven't looked at the numbers there, but I love C-Mac this week at 8,700 again, another high-priced guy, but he is going to see volume. He's going to see usage, and that's what I like from our running backs. Austin Eckler too, Kev. He's 7,200. This guy has just been amazing to start the year, putting up 40 DK points, coming back with 24. One of the highest scoring DK points. I know it seems like a huge drop off there with 15, but he was one of the highest scorers last week as well. And just, the amount of targets that he's seeing right behind Keenan Allen there in the passing game. And he really hasn't been able to kind of find his way running the ball. And Houston's a pretty solid run defense, but with the amount of targets he's able to see, I love him there. Joe Mixon, I talked about, he's had a chorus start to the season, just horrendous, god awful. Only 6 attempts and 11 attempts, but his seen his price, reflect that. And the 5,500 Joe Mixon in this game, I just feel like is way too cheap. And I think that they're going to try and, get him heavily involved, heavily utilized. If he's got the questionable tag off of him now, so he should be ready to go and play. He's another guy that I like. Kev, what are you seeing at the running back position to start this week, and where are your builds leaning you?
So I really like I think you start with Saquon, right? For me,
Mm-hmm.
I actually think this move now with going to Daniel Jones is a big upgrade for Saquon Barkley. Like, Saquon Barkley's been doing it because he's a man, right? He's just out there just doing his thing. Like, there's most running backs would be struggling mightily, but this dude is just the best running back in the league in terms of talent wise. But I think that with Daniel Jones and his ability to run the football, and if he can utilize some of that in this offense, that it opens up lanes a little bit more for Saquon, and it makes teams actually have to respect the pass for them. That I think that's going to just be even bigger for Saquon Barkley. So I really like Saquon. Like, we've seen 2 good weeks from Saquon these past 2 weeks. But we haven't seen like monster performance Saquon week, right? Where he puts up 35, right? I mean, 20 and 25 is certainly you're happy with that, but at 9,100, I mean, you're looking for 30 out of that.
Yes.
So, but I think this is a week that he definitely can do that, and I think most of the ownership is going to flow to Zeke at playing at home against Miami, and I think a good pivot off that at $200 more is definitely Saquon. So I'll probably be overweight on Saquon Barkley this week.
That's fair.
So, and some of these other plays, Austin Eckler, $7,200 is too much for me. Like that's too much. I was fine with him down in the low six, something like that. And I understand because of the usage that he's getting, but this dude's gonna fall back down to earth. Okay, like he's not 39.4 good. Okay, I mean 4.3 good.
Is this another one of your gut feelings?
No, this is not a gut feeling. This is a fact. We're not paying $7,200 for Austin Eckler. Austin Eckler is the sixth highest, running back.
Large field tournaments, baby. Large field tournaments. Load them up. Load them up.
No, I would give me David Johnson, who's cheaper at 6,800. I'll take that. I
don't mind David Johnson.
I really like David Johnson.
I don't mind him, but Eckler is seeing the top 5 usage at the running back position, Kev. Like, I mean, that's what you got to pay for, and I get the matchup not great against Houston, but they're finding ways to get him the ball without him having to carry it that many times.
I'm just saying, don't pay $7,200 for Austin Eckler. That's a trap. That's a trap. It's a trap, people.
Jamindare.
Don't do it. Don't do it. You're gonna be so upset. Like it's just don't do it. Find better ways to burn your money.
Is there anybody on KC that we can play this week, Kev? Running back?
Is there anybody? Say it again.
Is there anybody that we can play at the running back position for KC?
It's going to depend on news, right? So, like, I believe Damian Williams has not practiced this week. He didn't practice today. We'll see what happens tomorrow. I believe LaShawn McCoy got into limited work, but if Damian Williams misses, I think we might be looking square in the face of a Darwin Thompson breakout week. And, who else is going to get the? Darwin Thompson's stone minimum $3K, right?
Right.
And if neither one of them can go, you're looking at Darrell Williams and Darwin Thompson. Like Darwin Thompson's going to get a ton of work, and so there's a lot to like there, especially at the stone, at the nut minimum. So, right now, like that's probably what I'm looking at. There's still a possibility that all of them play, and then this kind of gets wiped out, but. With both of them being questionable, it sounds like there's a better chance LaShawn McCoy plays than Damian Williams, who has not practiced yet this week. So, that's going to be a big thing to watch tomorrow to see, what happens here in this backfield, because I do think that there is, there's a lot of fantasy goodness, as we know, that comes out of this backfield. And if Damian Williams happens to miss, then I think that it's going to be hard to get away from Darwin Thompson.
Right. I like that. I like that a lot. It's crazy because he's still minimum, and it doesn't always feel good to have those low price running backs. But when he's going to be the main guy who's back there, I don't think you even think about it. You just gotta pull the trigger and play him. Sony Michel, Kev, he comes in at 6,000. Favorable game script at home. Had what seemed to be a pretty solid grasp on the game last week against Miami, and then has a fumble, gets pulled, and then Rex Burkhead gets all of his work. So, like, is he somebody that you'd be comfortable with rolling out in tournaments only?
I would like to, but last week felt like it was a really big Sony Michel week. Like, going against the Dolphins, like it just felt like, okay, this is an easy week to slam them in. The Patriots are going to get up big, and they're just going to run Sony Michel 25 times. But it didn't really happen last week. They just continue throwing the ball. So, and Sony Michel, the other issue that I have with them really is the fact that they're not utilizing him at all as a pass catcher. So, trusting him there at 6K, it's not a terrible spot, and I don't think you're asking, you're not paying, upper echelon price for him, but still, I think there's better options, that are going before him or going up, or that are cheaper than him. Mark Ingram could be a pretty interesting play playing in Kansas City against the Chiefs. I think that Carry On at 5,600 is a better play. So Um, I just don't love that play, and it's not probably something that I'll have much exposure to. With Sonny Michel, now again, he could go out and rush for 120 yards and 2 touchdowns, like certainly in the range of possibilities. I mean, I'll have some, but it's not going to be nearly that much. What is your thoughts on some of these other like 4K running backs here? You have Raheem Mostert, who had that really big game last week. You have Kenyon Drake, Carlos Hyde. Like it's kind of an ugly range of running backs. I mean, hell, Devonta Freeman is 4,900 right now. Like
I
that's
know.
way too cheap for him. But at the same time, like he's not getting the carries. I mean, he's had 8 and 11 each of the last 2 weeks, and it's looked just washed. I mean, he had 8 for 19 and then 11 for 22. He has yet to break 3 yards per carry over the first 2 games. His longest run is 9 yards. But he's not really being utilized. He's basically getting 2 targets a game, or excuse me, 4 targets a game. So he's decent volume as a pass catcher, but not enough. But now you look at him at 4,900, like it'd be one thing if he was 6,500, but now at 4,900, like you don't need a ton from him for him to meet value.
I know, and it if it was some other running back, I mean, I'm trying to look. I mean, if this was Josh Jacobs or Mixon or Carry-On or Marlon, or I guess, Marlon Mack plays for them, but like Chris Carson, I would be all over this spot, Kev, because of how they've been allowing points to the running back position. My boy Austin Eckler, week 1, carves them up. And then they go last week. Who did they play last week? I was just looking at it. Indy played
Titans.
Yeah, Tennessee, Derrick Henry. So it's like he should eat in this game, but it's so hard to trust him. And one of the things we always said when Tevin Coleman was there, at least, was you play Devontae Freeman at home and in a favorable matchup, not on the road in outdoor games. And so he just hasn't. I haven't seen enough from him to warrant what the upside would be for some of these running backs now, or for a running back play for me. Now, I will say that a guy like Carlos Hyde here going against the Chargers, the amount of usage that he's been seeing, I'd roll him out at 4,500 before I roll Devonta Freeman out. I mean, it looks like he's pretty comfortable in this offense. They feel very confident in using him on first and second downs and then rolling out Duke Johnson later. And the Chargers have, been giving up yards sneakily on the ground to opposing running backs. This is a very favorable matchup for Carlos Hyde. So at 4,500, if he's still getting that work, I like him. I know people will try and talk up Frank Gore, especially if Singletary can't go. I'm hoping that Singletary can go in this game and that he's able to suit up, because if he is, I'm definitely going to get exposure to him. His average yards per carry are just insane, and it's ridiculous. Like #free Devin Singletary. They're just underutilizing this guy. It's not okay. Double-digit DK points on what he's able. What his usage is right now is ridiculous. Like he's so good. It's a shame that they're not playing him. Those would be my 2 favorite guys in this range. I don't think. Oh wait, hold on. What's his price? Yes, Miles Sanders. Kev, I might have to play some Miles Sanders here. They're favorite at home. He's kind of getting going as of late. I know the numbers aren't going to speak to that, but he was in on big plays in that Atlanta game on Sunday night. And I think they want to get him going. I mean, Jordan Howard looks to be non-existent. Hardly have heard his name all season. And then, we think that Darren Sproles is going to be the third down back, and they still keep Miles Sanders out there in that game against Atlanta. So Miles Sanders at 3,900, I definitely want some exposure to him.
Yeah, I wish they would feature him more, and give him closer to 20 touches a game. But yeah, I definitely think there's definitely some upside there for him, especially in that price range. And then, like, there's no like super cheap running back stand out to me. Like, if you wanted to take a shot on like an Ito Smith, I think you could. But right now, like, I think it's really, we just need to be monitoring what's going on with the Chiefs. And then
Well, what about Kev? If is he still? Yeah. So Marlon Mack is banged up, right? He's not practicing with this calf injury. If he can't go, would you be interested in Jordan Wilkins?
Well, I think we've kind of been here before, but I do remember. I think it was either last week or the week before, but I do think it was last week. He broke off a pretty significant long run, but I don't know.
Yeah,
Like,
last week 55 yarder.
yeah, I would probably rather have Naheem Hines than, but than Jordan Wilkins, because I think Jordan Wilkins would be more of that, short yardage in between the tackles grinder. Now the excitement there would be the fact that he'd probably be heavily utilized as, or inside the red zone as a goal line threat. So I don't know, like if he wants out a little bit, but like he's not something I'd be going out of my way to try to really jam in there.
No, I hear you on that, Kev. It's just an interesting thing that I'm trying to monitor. And in fields where I'm building, in the 20 max and things like that, like getting exposure, where Atlanta is giving up yards to pass catching backs. If Jordan Wilkins can get some of those targets, I like that. Naheem Hines too, if he's going to be featured, I think that could pay off dividends too. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about the running back position, Kev, before we move it on?
Are you going to have any interest in Alvin Kamara this week?
It's so cheap. I mean, price is ridiculous if Breeze was playing 8,000 for Kamara. I probably will, but I'll be lower than the field. I'll probably have him on a few lines, but it's just I just can't justify with Dalvin Cook being right there at 7,800 playing him in the way that this offense is schemed as we know how. Now, if they're able to kind of loosen things up with Taysom Hill and we can see him out there and getting going, that could be nice. But it's just a week where I want to get my exposures to and kind of already paying up. I just don't see Alvin Kamara fitting in there on main builds. But in a 20 max, sure, getting one or two lines that have him on it, he would even have to be a one-off for me because I just don't know if this game even makes sense to game stack right now. Because I just don't know on the other side if there's going to be enough luster from Russell to get it going. But yeah, 1-2 lines in the 20 max, I don't mind it.
My issue with him more than anything is really Teddy Bridgewater. Like, I wish they would just commit to Taysom Hill, because Teddy Bridgewater is awful, like just really, really bad. And I don't know, he does nothing to inspire any confidence. And so like that's my issue really mainly. The price tag decay is certainly interesting, but I just don't think I could go there.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. They got to do something because it looks like Breeze's surgery went well, and it doesn't look like he'll miss it 6 to 8 window, right? So I think he's going to try and get back in 6, and they got to try and keep some wins for him going before he gets back. Okay, let's talk about wide receivers here now, and very interesting slate of receivers that we have. I think this is the most. I say it every week, but it's always the most fun position for me. I feel like just how you're able to move pieces in and how the low priced and low owned guys can really pop off and really make a name if you hit on the running backs correctly. So we got DeAndre Hopkins at the top. Devontae Adams comes right behind him. Amari Cooper, Michael Thomas, Julio Jones, Antonio Brown, and then Keenan Allen round out the 7K range there. I talked about wanting Aaron Rodgers earlier. Devontae Adams is the guy you got to pair him with. I feel like 8 targets in the first game, 9 targets in the second game. And these are tough matchups, Kev. Let's not forget. I mean, he's going against Kyle Fuller for the Bears and Xavier Rhodes for the Vikings. And, only put up he had 4 catches for 36 against the Bears for 7.6, but still was nice to see him get 8 targets against that secondary. And then coming back with 7 catches for 106 putting up 20 DK points. He's bound to find the end zone. And, Denver gave up big plays to Tyrell Williams. They had Allen Robinson kind of contained there until the end, and then they gave up a big play to him. And just the way the target share that Devontae Adams has right now, is ridiculous. Rodgers is looking for him early and often. So I love Devontae Adams this week in tournaments. Chris Godwin would be a one-off play for me just because I just can't play Jameis. But I love Chris Godwin's matchup this week. This should be a good spot for him. I think, is Mike Evans still? No, he's not banged up anymore, so he can play. He's 6,600. I mean, yeah, Kev, you might be onto something with that Jameis stack there just because the pieces are nice to get him with. Stephon Diggs at 6K. I talked about Kirk Cousins as well. I mean, the targets have two in that first game against Atlanta. He was coming off of the hamstring injury or whatever it was, muscle tissue injury there. So I think that kind of limited him. But last week, this guy was everywhere, Kev, everywhere. Had a touchdown called back, 7 targets. He's really been utilized in this offense. And at 6K going against this Oakland secondary, this to me, it's not a lock, but I damn near want to be heavy over the field with Stephon Diggs this week because I think he's due. Larry Fitzgerald, 5,100. I'm probably going to roll him mostly in cash games because the ownership is going to be so high. Christian Kirk is probably going to be the guy that I play in tournament lines with Kyler Murray because he's seeing the same amount of usage as Larry Fitzgerald right now, 20 targets through 2 games. He's putting up big numbers, this Carolina secondary. I talked about it before. And I'm curious to see what they do in the secondary with James Bradbury for Carolina, who he's going to be lined up against. Will Fuller's another guy I'm looking to get to at 4,900 big plays. He was kind of flying all over the field last week against Jacksonville and had, a couple plays that were called back because of holding. Deshaun missed him on a couple big plays as well, too. So he's interesting for me as well. That's kind of where I'm looking at. And then Sammy Watkins, we talked about this last week about paying for Sammy Watkins. I think recency bias is going to have people off of him and try and lean McCole Hardman heavy, and DeMarcus Robinson's ownership is going to be sickening. So the fact that he still has 24 targets through 2 games, saw a price decrease, which is what we like. 6,800 now instead of 7,200. I like him. So Kev, wide receiver, where you at? What you liking?
Can we first just talk about why Julio Jones is only 7,300? I mean, maybe some of this is due because they played the late game this past week. Still, that seems egregious. $7,300 for Julio Jones. How Michael Thomas got that priced up to 7,400, especially with what could be Teddy Bridgewater. He was still okay last week, even without Drew Brees, but I don't know if I'm opposing defenses. I'm taking away their 2 best players, and that's Michael's trying to do what I can. Michael Thomas and Kamara. I mean, last week, he was still fine. I mean, he's living off of volume right now. I mean, he's already at 20 receptions on the season. He's at 20. He's hauled in 20 of 26 targets this year. So there's certainly something there. I mean, he had 18.9 and 25.3, but that touchdown upside and some of the other stuff here that we're kind of looking for makes it tough. He's still going to be peppered with targets for sure. But I don't know, it's a pretty risky proposition, especially on the road in Seattle, to play $7,400 Michael Thomas. But again, I think Julio Jones is an absolute steal at 7,300 against this Indy defense. That Indy defense is good, but it can certainly be beaten. It's tough to play Chris Godwin at 6,900. I feel like he continues to rise up, rightfully so. And then, like you mentioned, Mike Evans at 6,600. That might be as low as he gets all season. So, I think that's a good pivot. Attacking recency bias this week, where people are not going to want to play him. He's really struggled the first 2 weeks, and I feel like this could be a nice bounce back spot for him. So, I definitely think he's in play. And then Juju Smith-Schuster at 6,900, I think is certainly a viable option who likely won't carry much ownership. Completely agree on the Stephon Diggs call. 6K Stephon Diggs is egregious, as the kids say.
Let them know.
Yeah, I'm just saying. So yeah, John Brown, absolutely love John Brown at 5,500. I'm gonna have a lot of exposure to him. I think really trying to plant your flag and on who it is you're gonna play. I think now this week you'll see more ownership on Demarcus Robinson than you would on McCall Hardman, and I think that's somewhat of a mistake. I think McCall Hardman is certainly the way that I would want to go, especially just because his overall ceiling. He's somebody that can pop off a 60, 70-yard touchdown real quickly. So.
Right.
I think those are certainly viable options at quarterback this week. What are you doing with players, like the
Come on, Kev, you can get there. I trust you.
guys like John Ross, who has really exploded, a couple of weeks. Very explosive player. It seems like he's maybe finally putting it all together. He's had 20 targets, over his last 2 weeks, 12 and 8, and then has had over 100 yards receiving and a touchdown in both weeks. Like, are you still staying away from a John Ross, especially now as his price tag continues to rise, or is he something that you'd want to play?
Well, I had a little bit of John Ross last week, but I'll tell you what, I mean, even with the share that he's seeing, I think he has not the lead because I think Moncrief has him, but he has 4 drops on the season already. And he had 7 all of last year. That's very concerning. His big play is kind of what saved his week. And that came in the 4th quarter, like when it was all said and done. So I'm not sure if I just trust him enough to be there. And with guys like you said, I mean, Hardman's right there, Fitzgerald's right there, Demarcus Robinson is right there. I mean, Christian Kirk, all these guys, high usage, Marquise Goodwin. Like, I'd feel more comfortable playing this speedster against the Pittsburgh secondary, who really, can't keep up with anybody, I think. And, I don't know where they're going to line up Minka, so to speak, but I love Goodwin to get exposure to that game. So there's just so many other options that I would play before I would get to John Ross again. And, Kev, I just wanted to ask you real quick, last week you went on this whole tangent about how with Tyreek Hill being out, Sammy Watkins, you just play him, you don't think about it. And now we're probably going to get Sammy Watkins at lower ownership than even last week. And people last week losing money playing him. Do you think that's going to factor in at all for his ownership? And are we still just not thinking about it, playing him in? You turning back on your guy?
Oh, I'm not turning on him at all. This is another really good spot. I mean, last week the Chiefs just didn't really need Sammy Watkins. So if you go back and look, I remember last week. Last week was the first quarter they haven't scored in. I think it was when 22 games or something like that. They had a 22 first quarter scoring streak going on where they had scored that. So last week they were very slow moving. They were down 10-0 going into the second quarter. And then it was like, all right, we let them have their fun. Now let's just smash them. And then that's what happened. And, the fourth quarter, the Chiefs, Pat Mahomes threw 4 touchdowns. I think it was like 271 yards, all in just the second quarter. So, there's certainly some of that there. But, like I said, I definitely like Sammy Watkins. I definitely think you can play him now. And I 100% agree that his ownership is going to be reduced than what it was last week.
Oh yeah, I just can't. I mean, I love him this week. I can't get off of him. He's going to be seeing Brandon Carr most likely, but I'm sure they'll move Marlon Humphrey around to kind of get on him. I just think he should be able to get something going. But we can talk about another option that they have when we get to tight end, because he's still out there too, making mockeries of defenses. Kenny Galladay, there's 2 people that we need to talk about. They're both in this game. Kenny Galladay comes in at 6,600. This Philadelphia secondary is absolutely atrocious. And anybody who's getting the Ronald Darby coverage, I want. Kenny Galladay is in a smash spot, I feel like. You talked about Stafford, so I know that's your guy. I'm sure you're going to have some exposure to him too. 12, 159, 2 on the season so far. Just a really Um, really great spot for this guy. And the other guy is Nelson Aguilar. Chalk week. I can't believe we even made it this far before we even got to this guy. But Nelson Aguilar, he was everywhere on Sunday night. Had a huge drop at the end of the game that could have possibly won them the game, and so he has to live with that. But he's 3,600, has his price locked in from that Sunday night game. Saw 11 targets, 8 catches for 107 and a touchdown. Do we even need to think about it? Or with the injuries to Alshon and Deshaun, which are definitely going to keep him out this week, it sounds like, and potentially more, is this something we even need to think about? Or are we just playing him knowing that he's going to be one of the highest owned receivers on the slate?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that you want at least some exposure here to Nelson Aguilar, because he's going to be kind of, he's going to kind of be the man there. I mean, you have Zach Ertz who's still there, JJ Arcega-Whiteside and then it's Nelson Aguilar. So yeah, I mean, I think especially at the price tag of 3,600, I don't know how you can really get away with that unless you say, okay, well, I'm gonna pivot off of him and I'm gonna go with James Washington, who's 3,500, and.
What about Arcega-Whiteside?
Yeah, I mean, so this week he's been getting runs with the ones. A very explosive player, but last week he played 75. I mean, he had to play last week. I mean, he had 75 targets, or excuse me, 75 targets. He ran 75. Was in on 75% of the plays. But at the same time, he wasn't efficient with them at all.
Right.
On the season, he has 1 catches for 4 yards, despite the fact that he played 75 snaps last week. So he's just not getting out there. I don't know what was going on there, but yeah, I mean, if I had to plant my flag on one of these super cheap cheapies, it probably would be Nelson Aguilar for sure, number one, and then after that, I think James Washington has some upside too.
Yeah, I definitely don't mind James Washington. I even think in large field GPPs, a guy like Deontay Johnson, I don't even know what his price is. He's minimum. He could be all right. I mean, they want to talk about the college rapport that Mason Rudolph and Washington have, but this is a guy, they were on pretty much the same playing field, because Washington was seeing so much run with the ones in preseason that Deontay Johnson was becoming Mason Rudolph's guy to kind of target there in that second and third preseason game, and to get him work. And so we kind of saw him get into some plays last week. So that could be an interesting play at 3K there to pair with Mason Rudolph. I don't know if you're necessarily stacking by any means Pittsburgh and San Francisco, but to get him at a low percentage in GPPs is great. And then before we move on to tight ends, Kev, Damiere Byrd, he's the minimum. It's a revenge game going against his former team in Carolina. The usage he saw last week, even with Michael Crabtree being back, was great. 6 catches on 7 targets, 45 yards, not a touchdown, but this is, kind of flirted with double-digit DK points in week 1 against Detroit, comes back, has double-digit points with no touchdowns against Baltimore. Damiere Byrd at 3K, got to play him, right?
I mean, I think "gotta" is a pretty strong word there. I mean, that is, I don't know about that. I don't know if he's a gotta play guy. I mean, I think that there certainly are players that we could all make a case for that maybe are in a little bit better spot, or somebody like a Miles Boykin who's bare minimum, I think would be something, an interesting play.
Got more usage than Miles Boykin, though. He's got more routes run than him.
Yeah, but I feel like that I think maybe he has a little bit more higher ceiling, especially in this game, where I feel like that there's a much higher likelihood that that the Ravens end up being. That's this. Would it surprise you at all if this Ravens Chiefs game was a 41-37 type of game?
No, not at all.
Yeah, and I feel like it would kind of surprise you if this the Panthers game, heading into Carolina would really be, I mean, I don't know. This feels like more of like a 24-21 type of game. So, in terms of just overall, opportunity share, and the type of games that it's going to be. Like, I definitely think, somebody like I said, a Miles Boykin is certainly an interesting target.
Yeah, I mean, but you look at, PFF has the snaps and route. He's 94, so second on the team in snaps for route, third on the team in targets. The yards haven't been there, but the way that he's being utilized is just fantastic. So I'll definitely have some exposure to Demir. Probably not a must play by any means, but as much exposure as I have to Kyler Murray, I'm definitely having some teams where I pair him up with Demir Bird, and I'm hoping that pays off. Kev, let's move to tight end here. We got Kelsey at the top at 7,100. Nobody else in the 6K range. Then you got Zach Ertz at 57. George Kittle at 56. Man, are we going to get a George Kittle week or what? He had 2 touchdowns that first week. They get called back. Only 3 targets against Cincinnati. Was still able to put up 8.4 out of it, but this could be a get-right spot for him going against Pittsburgh. They love to give up points to the tight end. Just gave up 2 touchdowns to Will Dillesley. So, I like George Kittle this week. Maybe that's a game stack I'm not looking close enough. I'll have to get some Jimmy G, George Kittle, because 5,600 seems too cheap for him. Evan Ingram, Kev, I wonder if you have some exposure to him if you're targeting that game. Mark Andrews is banged up. It's pretty much like tight end circus out there, but Mark Andrews is leaping heads beyond everybody else. But it is frustrating to see Hayden Hurst come in, catch a pass, Nick Boyle come in, catch a pass. So he returned to practice. He's got limited work. He's only 4,600. He makes a ton of sense in game stacks, but I'm curious to see what his ownership will be like after the start to the season. He's had Darren Waller at 4,100 is somebody I can definitely get behind, just with, Josh Jacobs might not play. Tyrell Williams is dealing with the hip injury, even though it seems like he's going to suit up. But he's got a pretty decent target share on the team. He's been pretty solid to start. Minnesota's not giving up a crazy amount of points to the tight end, but decent enough to be attacked with. And then, you scroll down and you got guys like O.J. Howard, 3,800, Jason Witten, 3,700, Greg Olsen, 3,700, all pretty much in favorable matchups. So it doesn't seem like a week to pay up for a tight end. And then that always seems to be the week that it is pay up for a tight end. So for you, Kev, where would you be looking to go this week? Or willing to put your money on?
Yeah, I think I definitely want to pay up for tight end. We've talked about Travis Kelce, but I think Zach Ertz, especially with all the players that look like may not be playing, I think that you easily could see 10 to 12 targets for him this week, and at a reduced cost of 5,700. I think he's a pretty easy play. I definitely agree with Evan Ingram at 5,200. Like I said, I've kind of talked about already. I do think that this game, offers some sneaky shootout potential. O.J. Howard at 3,800 seems way too cheap. But I get it because he really hasn't been that much involved. I know Bruce Arians came out this week and says that they would like to get him more balls. So we'll wait to see on that one. But, I think they're in play. Austin Hooper at 3,600. Again, I have no idea why they're all these players. Atlanta is also a really cheap stack if you wanted to. You could play, something like a Julio and Calvin Ridley stack, or a Julio and Matt Ryan and and Austin Hooper, or whatever, however you wanted to do it. It's a pretty cheap stack. The most expensive part of that is
Julio.
Yeah, it's Julio at 7,300. So
right.
For me, I think though I'm gonna keep it pretty tight for tight end, and I'll play a little bit of Kelsey, but then I'll play Ertz, Evan Ingram, and probably O.J. Howard.
Yeah, it's 60 snaps for O.J. Howard and no targets. That's crazy. Kev, do we make it 3 weeks in a row where you want to talk about Tyler Kroft almost ready to come back?
I'm just here to give updates, okay? I'm just here, this is a Tyler Kroft friendly show.
Oh my Lord.
And every week we're getting new updates, and it's the only thing that is sad is, I guess, for our weekly Tyler Kroft update for this week is Kroft suffered a left ankle sprain at Thursday's practice. So, the man was trying to come back, and, I don't know.
Oof.
But I'm going to hold out hope. We're going to have a Tyler Croft week this week. It's still going to happen.
It might be almost time to pour one out. I might have to bring the 40 to next week's show, episode 60, and pour one out for Tyler Croft if he has any more setbacks, as you call them. No, tight end is. I mean, we're getting to the point, Kev, where we can almost say tight end's pretty straightforward. We're starting to see how usage kind of formulates and be used, and it's just one of those things. I mean, if you want to build lines with Kelsey, by all means, go ahead and do it. 7,100, especially if you're not playing Sammy Watkins as well too. If you're getting a guy like McCall Hardman in there, or even Demarcus Robinson again with Pat Mahomes, I think that makes a ton of sense. And then most people will try and run it back, I feel like, with Mark Andrews, so you could get some leverage there on the Kelsey teams, and maybe even like we didn't talk about Hollywood Brown, but Marquise Brown and Lamar Jackson running it back with Kelsey. That's an ultimate not an ultimate, but that's pretty contrarian, I feel like, for this week, the way that it's shaping out. So a lot of ways that you can attack that game. So definitely make sure you get your exposures right as you're playing that. Kev, let's move on and close it out with defense. And as we said at the start of the podcast, defense was what won the week last week. If you didn't have Patriots, you pretty much weren't winning money at all. I'm not talking about big money. I mean, cashing, like seeing zeros come back, no return on investment if you faded the Patriots, which was just sickening because it seemed like they were okay, like 19, 18 points is what they were flirting with until they get a defensive touchdown. Oh, wait, we're going to get another defensive touchdown just late in the game. Very sickening. Cowboys are the favorites this week, 4,300 going against Miami. They should be somewhat chalk. I mean, you got New England going against the Jets, who the Jets have a lower implied total, Kev, if you can believe it, than the Dolphins do. Actually, that might have been before the roasted news that I saw that, but still, it's ridiculous. And they come in again at 3,800, only a $100 price increase for them. They're going to be popular. But what ways can we attack and get exposures on defenses? Because this is one of those positions where it pays to be contrarian, like more than anything, because the exposures are so high and top heavy on these guys that if you get a defensive touchdown from one of these other teams, not one from the top where these people are paying up for, it could really be good. Is there any way that we can take advantage here? The Cardinals secondary is so atrocious, but like 2,700 going against Kyle Allen, does that have any merit to it? The Chargers, Deshaun Watson has kind of been loose with the football. They're 2,500 at home. What are you seeing? What's sticking out to you to start with defense?
Making a decision on, the $4,300 Dallas Cowboys. I mean, that's a lot to spend for a defense where I think most often
so much money
that where we want to pay down. But sometimes I think it almost becomes an issue because you almost always want to pay down and you kind of ignore the high priced teams and don't really get as much exposure to them as well. Like the Patriots last week, I didn't have a ton of Patriots and defense, and that was just because they were one of the higher priced defenses, and I'm always looking to pay down and save some money. And I think generally most people, basically, I feel like that they build their team, their core of quarterback through the flex, and then once they get to defense, it's kind of like, okay, what do I have left? Oh, okay, I only have 2,400. Okay, let me just pick a defense here. Like most people aren't building lineups with the thought process in mind a lot of times of what defense that they want to select. So, I think it's you're just more of where do you stand this week and like who do you feel best about, and then just kind of rolling with it, because variance is so much real. It's very real in terms of defenses. So, for me, I think I'll pretty much be probably playing the Chiefs defense. I'll have a little bit of exposure just because how much better they are at home than they are on the road. But I definitely want to pay up and have some Cowboys defense for sure in this matchup. Whenever I can, maybe pay down at some of those, those cheaper stacks that we were talking about, and then get some exposure to that. But I'm definitely going to go there. And then I think from other than that, I think the Packers defense at 3,400 is certainly a way that you can go. And then I also think that, we know that Jameis Winston is definitely turnover prone. So if you wanted to go Giants defense at 3K, I think that's a way you could go and hope for a couple Jameis Winston's turnover. Maybe one ends up being a pick six.
No, I like that Giants call a lot, and if Danny Dimes, as they call him, if he's out there kind of performing and keeping them into the game, they could be having a lot to play for. Packers, again, I think we talked about them last week, going against Denver 3,400. They've been pretty solid to start the season. I mean, 3 interceptions, 2 forced fumbles, 6 sacks. That's a nice pivot play, I feel like, at defense. Kev, what you got for us week 3 before we wrap it up and start building this Millie team for the people?
Just play the Millie team. I think the Millie team has actually done decent the last 2 weeks, if I remember correctly. I know the first week it did really well that we built, and I think last week wasn't that bad either. I'll have to go back and look to see exactly how it finished, but I know I entered it and I thought it did decent.
Yeah, it started out okay, but we kind of died off because of the Robert Woods not having Brandon Cooks, and we had Kamara on that team, so that was rough. That was rough. But week 1, you're right. Week 1, we got I think 4x, 3x, or 4x on the investment there. So I know some people are playing our Millie teams in cash and head-to-heads. And winning that first week, so that's awesome to see. But they are very tournament minded, tournament based teams. So try and play them in some single entries and some high field GPPs, because that's kind of how we attack them. But by all means, if you want to play them in cash, go right ahead. So that's going to do it for week 3. Main slate talk, but we're going to build this Millie team before we sign off. So Kev, let's get into it and let's build it. And we're going to go back to the start quarterback here. And I think I'll let you start it off last week. I'll start it off this week. And I think a player that I'm feeling pretty good about this week is Kenny Golladay. I want to get exposure to him. He's been paying off dividends. I like him at this price. So Kenny Golladay goes in, wide receiver, 6,600. What are we playing with?
All right, let's keep it moving. I'm going to go Saquon at 9,100.
All right, so Saquon goes in there. 9,100. We got 4,900 left on the slate. Let's see what we got here. You know what, Kev? I'm going to make it interesting. Well, I don't know if I want to get that crazy just yet. Let's see. You know what? Hell with it. I'm going to get crazy with it. Miles Sanders, 3,900. I'm putting him in.
I'm just going to spin up. I'm going to go. I'm going to go Juju Smith-Schuster at 6,900, which leaves 4,700 left apiece.
Okay. We're going to need this team to be carried somehow. Cheap exposure. So I'm saying we go my homeboy and get some pieces around him.
All right, let's go. Let's go 5K McCole Hardman.
I like it. 3,600 per player left. Let's see what we can do here. We'll go Giants D against turnover guy, aficionado, Jameis Winston, have that stack with the running back, and let's just see what we have with tight end and flex. 39.50 left for the two positions.
Let's go ahead and let's lock in OJ Howard at 3,800.
All right, so we lock in OJ at 3,800, which leaves 4,100 for myself and the flex. And let's see what we got here. Not looking great. Let's see one thing real quick. See what happens.
I'll tell you what. Let's do this. Let's do this. Let me take out Juju. I think there's some better wide receivers that'll free up us a little bit more cap by dropping down from him. Let's drop from Juju down to Stephon Diggs at 6K, and then I'll give you 5K to play with.
Like that. I'm even gonna say if we go Demir Bird. I do like Mixon. Mixon and Bird over Sanders and whoever we were going to play. I think that's a play. Giants, so we could actually pay up for Packers too if we didn't want to play Giants. We are playing OJ Howard. Doesn't really matter all that much, but we do have the opportunity to move there if we wanted to. Mahomes, Barkley, Mixon, Galladay, Diggs, Hardman, Howard, Bird, Giants. Is that what we're going with?
Let's do it. We got a little crazy. We got a little different. That's the way to do it.
That's the way to do it. All right, we're locking it in. 400 left on the table. Again, that was Pat Mahomes, Saquon Barkley, Joe Mixon, Kenny Galladay, Stephon Diggs, McCole Hardman, OJ Howard, Demir Bird, Giants D. It's going into the millie. It's locked in. And that's going to do it. We're locked in for week 3, episode 59 of the DGen Nation podcast. The DFS DGen Nation will be back next week talking to you guys about week 4. That'll be the quarter, guys, the quarter of the way through the NFL season. Once we wrap up with week 4, it's crazy. We're full throttle ahead. We're gunning. We hope you guys are having fun. We hope that, if you're new to this, please DM us at DGen Nation Pod is where you can find us on Twitter. Slide in the DMs, as Kev always says. We get you into the free Slack chat. Slack chat's been running. We've had some success with guys on showdowns playing. Week 1 was big for us, and we're looking to bounce back here in week 3 as well. People are in there Saturday nights, Sunday mornings, talking about plays, doing last-minute research, and kind of just talking all throughout the week on what they're seeing, what they're viewing, weather conditions, injuries, all types of stuff is happening in there, and it's free. So we'd love to see you guys in there. Hit us up on there. Make sure you guys like and rate and review the podcast, the stream, any which way that you can get it, so that we can keep this running for you guys, because we like doing it. Kev, say one word for the people before we out of here.
Tyler Croft week is coming.
God, that's how you choose to say it? Oh, my God. We're back next week, week 4, episode 60, DGen Nation Pod. Signing off for Kevin Steele at Fantasy Rat 13. It's Ryan Williams at Ryan Alexander. _W and win this money, guys. We out.